Hey you youngins out there, today we're going to be showing you guys a legendary graphics card that we know and love.
The GTX 1080, and in 2024 we think it can still game, especially at a great price point of $120 on the used market, but we got to benchmark it to find out after a word from today's sponsor.
Having a high quality power supply for your gaming PC is important, and one company you should definitely consider for your next PC build is today's video sponsor NZXT and their new C series of power supplies. Meet their top of the line C1500 that comes packed with an 80+ platinum and cybernetics titanium efficiency rating, a zero fan mode when the power supply is running at less than 60% load, and it comes packed with two 16-pin 12-volt power connectors, perfect for any high-end gaming PC build. But NZXT also offers 80+ gold models at a wide range of power options, from 850 watts to 1000 watts and even 1200 watts, catering to a variety of PC builds from mid-range to high-end. These gold power supplies come with the 80+ gold efficiency and also boast a cybernetics gold 1 efficiency rating and an A rating on the noise level scale, along with durable heat-resistant 12-volt 16-pin power connectors suitable to push 600 watts for the RTX 40 series GPUs. They're available in black or white to fit the color scheme of your next gaming PC, and you can learn more about these for your next gaming PC build by checking the link in the description down below. Big thanks again to NZXT for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get into it, shall we?
The GTX 1080 is an awesome card from Nvidia that really set the market on a new pace to greatness. This card was released in 2016. That was when Matt and I were kind of first getting into YouTube, and it was a legendary card. It was definitely out of our price range, but let's be honest, we all wanted one.
Let's go over some of the key specs of the GTX 1080 and why we think it's still a pretty decent option depending on the price you pay for it. Now, as Jackson mentioned, this card released in 2016 at a price point of $599. It is a PCI 3.0 by 16 card, and in terms of modern comparisons, it's very similar to an RTX 2060, but with 2 more gigs of VRAM. That VRAM being 8 gigabytes of GDDR5X memory. This specific model requires one 8-pin for power with a total TDP of only 180 watts and a base clock of 1607 megahertz with a boost of 1733. And the model we have here specifically is an EVGA model, this 2-fan model that is actually the card that I had when I owned a GTX 1080 way back in the day when I bought one. Interesting story about that. I might talk about it on a YouTube short one day, but GTX 1080, really awesome card, but we're gonna need to test it in today's games to see if it actually is worth it. And when we paid $120 for it, is that good price performance? We'll talk about the test bench and then dive into some benchmarks.
To go over the specs of the test bench, we have the Ryzen 7 7700X that is an 8-core 16-thread with a large tower cooler cooling it. We also have 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM at 6000 megahertz in dual channel. This test bench is packed with storage as well with a 4TB Lexar Gen 4 NVMe SSD. We have an Asus ROG Strix B650 Wi-Fi motherboard. We have a 1200 watt 80+ gold fully modular power supply, all inside of a pretty high airflow full ATX case.
Now that we talked about our test bench that we test all our GPUs on here on the channel, let's go ahead and throw the GTX 1080 in there and see how it performs.
Alright guys, now that we have the legendary GTX 1080 on our test bench, let's talk about how it performed in the latest titles and if you should actually go out of your way to buy one of these graphics cards. So the games that we tested are as follows. We have Cyberpunk, Ghost of Tsushima, Forza Horizon 5, Warzone, The Finals, and Fortnite. Now first up in Cyberpunk, we decided to go high settings with this one because hey, this was a top of the line card back in the day. Let's see what its ceiling is at 1080p high settings in Cyberpunk with no FSR, and we almost cranked out 60 FPS. For a GPU that's around 8 years old, it's really impressive to see in the latest titles you can still get 60 FPS, close to 60 FPS that is, at 1080p high settings, and that's not even using any upscaling tech. In single player titles, you could use AMD FSR with one of these GPUs because yes, they don't support DLSS, and still get really good results, probably 70 to 80 FPS in a game like Cyberpunk. Next up is Ghost of Tsushima. At 1080p high settings, we tested FSR 3 with frame gen and got really awesome results. 80 to 90 FPS, and it looked absolutely beautiful. The GTX 1080 in terms of a modern comparison is similar to like an RTX 2060, but comes with more VRAM, obviously 8 gigs of VRAM, and it is a little bit slower than a 2060 Super. So it's still a really decent graphics card, especially with modern driver support. And when you pair it with a modern CPU, like let's say a 10th Gen i5 or a 10th Gen i3 even, that would work really well, or a Ryzen 5 5600 or 4500 because it is a Gen 3 by 16 card, it does not need a Gen 4 CPU, you can get really good 1080p medium settings, even high settings results. And as you can see in single player titles that look beautiful like Ghost of Tsushima, running frame gen works really well and gives you a good FPS boost in an older graphics card. Now let's talk about Forza Horizon 5. We ran 1080p high settings with no upscaling and got an average of 103 FPS. Obviously, Forza Horizon 5 is becoming a bit of an older game, but it's still cool to see 100 plus FPS in a game that looks absolutely beautiful. And in terms of all our single player titles, it's really cool to see the GTX 1080 still hold its own. We did pick this up, as I mentioned, for $120. I think that is the sweet spot for the price to performance, especially a nice model like this EVGA model. Rest in peace, EVGA. But it's still a really nice model that will work really well. Cool this thing very nicely. We're getting about 70 degrees Celsius. Probably the repace will be more into the 60s. This is a bit of an older card, and you can see pretty good price performance value here when paired with the right CPU. That is the key here in some of these newer games. Because our test bench is a Ryzen 7 7700X, we did get a bit of a boost from having that nice CPU. But if you do pair with a relatively modern mid-range CPU, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you will not be disappointed with the performance numbers. Now let's dive into some esports titles. We got Warzone 1080p balance settings, no FSR. We got about 80 to 90 FPS. Not too bad. We didn't use any upscaling here because we wanted to make sure we got maximum responsiveness. And 80 to 90 FPS in a game like Warzone that is incredibly hectic nowadays. Very, very awesome. I think if we're going to be mainly playing games like Warzone, you definitely want to go with a slightly better CPU. So maybe like used market Ryzen 5 3600 or a Ryzen 5 5600 would be the best bang for buck if you want to get 80 to 90 FPS in Warzone. And I think the sweet spot PC build price point for a total build with one of these, I wouldn't spend much more than about $500. Probably $450 is the sweet spot because at, again, $120, it is a decent card, but it is an aging card. And with 10 series probably being the next GPU that's going to lose driver support at some point in the future, you won't have a ton of time left with this card, but hopefully Nvidia leaves these things going because Nvidia's 10 series has been one of the best, longest running series ever. Now let's dive into the finals. 1080p medium settings with no FSR, once again 80 to 90 FPS. The finals is the game that has a lot of awesome physics happening, and it really pushes older GPUs to the limits because they're not really designed to handle all of this. But hey, it did a great job, 80 to 90 FPS. Wouldn't say it's super competitive ready, but if you run all those settings with a good CPU, you probably get 100 plus FPS, getting good results. And of course, the last game we have to test is Fortnite. DX11 mode performance settings, far view distance, low textures, and we got 200 plus FPS. Again, I do have to put the disclaimer out there, running these settings and running Fortnite in general is a very CPU bound game, so it depends on what CPU you get. But if you get a modern CPU like a Ryzen 5 5600 or greater, or an i5 10400 or greater, probably 12400 would be a better comparison, but an i5 12400 or greater on the Intel side of things, you should see pretty close to the same results, at least 144 plus FPS. So my general recap of the GTX 1080 in 2024, I think if you could find it from 100 to 120 bucks, you are going to be very happy with it. This graphics card comes with 5 display out and has an 8-pin for power, and all in all, a really clean looking card that makes for a good mid-range PC. $500 or less, you can build a really awesome gaming PC using this GTX 1080, and you should definitely do some deal hunting for one by checking the links down below. They will be affiliate links and they will help us out. But yeah, this graphics card actually has a special place in my heart because this is the exact model GTX 1080 that I had in my PC when I first bought a GTX 1080 back in the day, and it's really cool to benchmark games in 2024 with the same model that I picked up on eBay for a great price. So now we finished the benchmarking section of today's video. Let's bring Jackson back in here and wrap this video up real quick.
Alright guys, we just got done benchmarking our $120 GPU, and one of the things I gotta say I love about these two is if you go on eBay and Facebook, sometimes you can find them even at the $100 price point, and keep in mind, you're basically getting in between a 3050 to 3060 level performance, but you're gonna be paying double for those graphics cards.
Now there is slight concern, again, with this card being from 2016, that it may not have a lot of life in it, but if you are building a budget gaming PC around 400 to 500 bucks, the 1080 is really good to consider, especially if you're playing a lot of the games we benchmarked in today's video. The performance is still there, and even though this graphics card is approaching 10 years old, 8 years old at the time recording this video, it's still a really awesome option for budget builds on the used market. So if you want to buy one yourself, check the links in the description down below. We'll be affiliate links, and they will help us out. Let us know what you think of the GTX 1080 and 10 series as a whole in the comments down below, and are you buying these graphics cards still?
So as always, we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, check out our other 2 YouTube channels and also our twitch.tv/toastybros, and do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.
So this GTX 1080 will be for sale in a PCBros.tech gaming PC, and you can watch it live on twitch.tv/toastybros.
PCBros.tech, we sell gaming PCs, gaming laptops, and so much more. Use code TOASTYBROS on checkout. You'll save 3% on your next purchase. See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Dunzo.